I am thrilled when I get an opportunity to do it. So I thank you for that. Would you join me in prayer? Dear Lord, remove me from this equation and speak freely. Help us. This is the time that we gather to hear you, to hear your word, to understand your direction in our lives. Give us the strength to face up to that. Help us to understand that you are ever ready to help us do your will. It is in Jesus' powerful and productive name I pray. Amen. Amen. Title of this morning's message is Acceptable Risk. My professional background, such that it is really kind of varied in terms of risk assessment. Early on in my life, risk assessment meant literally trying to stay alive. That was the risk assessment. When you're racing, you're coming pretty close, and that's the purpose of the job. It's not insane. If you're trying to win, there are 43 other people on the track who are trying to do the same thing. So our risk assessment becomes kind of warped, to put it that way. Later on in life, when I started working for, frankly, pasty white profession known as architecture, it took on a different kind of twist to it. It was a lot more people motivated or money motivated as opposed to life and death. So with that filter, you're going to hear my own somewhat odd, I would say, assessment of risk. Okay. Let's start, as I'm always a big fan, before I drag all of my personal opinions, ideas, and observations into this message, I really, really think it's important to cover the setup, to do the context. We read, yes, it was 15 verses and quite long. It's a story, but you have to know, I think it helps to understand it in context. When did Christ say it? Who was he talking to, etc. I'll keep this brief because I don't want to be boring for sure. The religious authorities, the priests, the scribes were the lawyers of that day, Pharisees and Sadducees. So we had quite a group of people, okay, all with their own different twists. We're already extremely ticked off about Christ's popularity that had been gained in the past 3 years. Okay, Matthew 21, 1 through 11. We hear the common people shouting, Jesus, the prophet from Nazareth in Galilee, when he entered into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. Them hearing this statement served to only substantiate and prove to the authorities that their growing paranoia of this man's control over the populace was justified. Now, this is a very, very pivotal moment. I don't think that people really grasp. I was always interested in what exactly got Christ killed, exactly, specifically. And most academics, most theologians, most secular historians all agree that this following act, Jesus' use of a whip to clear the temple, is what got him killed. Look, the Romans were all about who controlled the city. I don't really care what you believe or what you want to do, but you disrupt commerce, we have a problem. Okay? Yes. Now we're talking money, and you had just crossed the line. Okay, that is what brought Rome's attention. Okay. Then I think, just in case you're wondering, or somehow that was Rome's side of it, the Pharisees, Sadducee side of it, I don't have to make this up. And I quote, then the Pharisees met together to plot how to trap Jesus into saying something which would get him arrested, Matthew 22:15. When Jesus returned to the temple and began teaching, the leading priests and elders came up to him and demanded, by what authority are you doing these things, meaning miracles? This is kind of a strange question, don't you think? Who gave you the right? Matthew 21:23. One of them, an expert in religious law, tried to trap him with this question: Teacher, which is the most important commandment in the law of Moses? This was Matthew 22:34 through 35. So you can see that their, however you want to put it, their negativity had solidified into an active attack. They were after him. They made no bones about it. Okay? Their traps and questions that they were posing to Christ were met with a series of parables. Now, this isn't a new thing. Christ had been telling stories for, well, almost all of his ministry in a wide variety of categories, in a wide variety of settings. Okay? And that, I think, is what we're discussing right now, Matthew 25. Now let's get into this. There are two stories in Matthew 25. One of them is about bridesmaids staying away, and the other one is about this morning's reading about money being loaned or assigned or given to people for investment. Now, just stand way back. Again, this is bottom shelf kind of thinking. Stand way back and just use what we all know to be the common sense that has led us to our lives and decisions. Just basic kind of thinking here, okay? Both these parables, bridesmaid and loan money, Christ is directly comparing two types of believers: diligent and intentional about living out their faith in God. You want to actively choose this. You want to actively work at it. You want to think about it. You want to fix it. You want to make it better. Then the second set are the people who are actually taking what they believe in the short term to be a lesser risk, and that is they've replaced their faith in God, which they don't control, understand, or can predict, with the pursuit of money, human respect, or power. In other words, what I can see, feel, hear, and taste, I want that. I don't want what God can give me. I don't even understand God. Therefore, I'm going to revert to something I can understand, or at least control, or both. Huh? Now, here's I have always looked at, I freely admit, one of the advantages of reading the Bible when you're 18 is you walk away with an entirely different view than what you've been told up until 18. Okay? Good. I look at the Bible and I'm reading about Christ and I'm like, dude, that's going to get you in trouble. You know what I mean? Like, whoa. I always saw him, as a revolutionary. I really did. I always thought this dude is like running around poking people in the eye intentionally. Okay? I ain't playing with you. You know what I mean? Now, this is one of the reasons why this occurred. He was telling this parable in the temple in front of Pharisees, Sadducees, scribes, the whole group, right? These two parables blatantly indicted the priests, scribes, and Pharisees. Okay? And then here's the kick. If that wasn't bad enough, Christ did this condemnation in front of the very people these priests were trying to control and suppress. Don't do this if you want to keep your head attached to your body. Don't do this. Know where the landmines are? Don't step on them. The motto of any family reunion, huh? Amen. Years ago, I had a policeman tell me this, state trooper of all people. A rebel attempts to change the past. A revolutionary attempts to change the future. Yeah. Which are you, kid? Tell me. I want to know. I didn't have an answer for him because I couldn't understand what he was saying. Jesus brought about a drastic change in this world. Any Christian that does not see that, I question whether they're a Christian. I'm not much into judging that. I really am. No. But if you cannot grasp the drastic changes that this man was pushing, I'm not really sure if you understand the saying Jesus eyebrow. Let's put it that way. He subverted everything at the time. Everything. This is, by our standards, not an acceptable risk. Yes? This is not. No. He changed humanity's view of God by starting nothing less than the kingdom of God. Right in the word. Today is the day, you and me right now. He brought about a radical change to the old order of things. That's an understatement. And replaced it with a new order. That's the great part to me. There's a whole lot of people who can tear stuff up. God knows I've done my share. But there are darn few people in the world who tear something up and say, okay, this is the new bull now. This is where we're going. This is how we're going to get there. This is why we're doing it. Okay. He did that. He brought a new order. He started talking about a new birth to Nicodemus straight away. A new culture, a new civilization, a new way of doing life. Yeah. Unheard of at that time. Then some examples of this. It's one thing to intellectualize this, right? He was anything but that. He showed that no one was beyond God's healing. He touched lepers. He healed women and children and foreigners. Come here, I'll show you how this is done right here. He talked to women during the daytime, which now, kind of duh, right? Back then, it was a big deal. As a religious leader, they called him a rabbi. You didn't touch, you didn't talk to women because they were property. Yeah. They were lower than men. Okay? It's a big deal. He not only talked to women during the daytime, but his ministry actually relied on them. He treated them as equals. Right then and there. Come on, Mary, you can do this. No, Lord, come on, we ain't got time for this. Then he would talk about some really crazy, crazy stuff to people who were just so freaked out by the religious leaders at the time. He told them that the first would be last, and the last really are first in God's eyes. Then he proved it by eating with tax collectors, prostitutes, thereby declaring them equal with him. Yeah. Jesus was killed as a political criminal. I really don't know how much more revolutionary that you can get than that. Now, all of that was to show you on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being no risk and 10 being you got to be kidding me, why hot risk? He exists in the 10. That's where I was going. Now, I am not here, and this is where most of them, I've listened to this numerous times. I'm sorry to say it, but it's true. I hear too many people doing this, let's drag everybody down into the guilt-laden cesspool of trying to compare our performance with Christ's performance. Stop. We are not Christ. There is but one of him. Okay? And the verbiage or the garbage that I hear in this cesspool goes something like this. Self-reliance will get you to perform at Christ's level if you're really, really faithful. Okay? Oh, come on now. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You can do this. Come on. Like cheerleader, you know. I'm sorry to say this, but it's my belief this is pure delusion. Pure delusion. On our own, we cannot even come within a country mile of Christ's example. I think the actual phrase is, I am the vine, you are the branches. Without me, you can do nothing, I think is the way he said it. Right? This whole belief that somehow we can do it by ourselves means we're not really branches, we're the vine. This is heresy. This is stupidity. Okay? Any number of observations and lessons can be found in the 25th chapter of Matthew. There are, like all biblical texts, especially the red letters we see in the Bible, there's numerous applications, right? But again, I always want to start with the bottom shelf because that's where I feel the most comfortable, frankly. I do not bleed at those upper levels. I can't. I'll be honest. Look, folks, I do my share of reading commentaries. I've seen stuff that, like, oh my gosh, I'm reading this in preparation. Where in the world did you get that? I mean, they're jumping, you know what I mean? Just huge jumps. I don't favor that, but bear with me. This is my understanding of these basic points. What if, just what if, Matthew 25, and the exchange between common people and religious rulers was a study in risk assessment? I do it all the time. I have to at work. It's just part of the business. Actions, how do I put this? The people who are into the Pharisees, the scribes, religious leaders were trying to maintain status quo. We've heard that numerous times. Well, in this particular case, to me, they're running a far, 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 far higher risk factor in the long term. Let me show you. Let's back up. If they're looking for people's approval, and we know for a fact that all humanity, each one of us, has a 100% mortality rate. Nobody gets off this planet alive. Nobody. So you're putting all of your chips in something that's temporary, something that's fickle, something that has shown that it is incapable of a continuity. I mean, look at all the governments of the world. Look at our police. I don't care what it is. We are not good at maintaining our promises. Even though we try, our track record does not show us that way. Now, these guys, religious leaders, put all of their trust in that. To me, that strikes me as being a high-risk adventure. Now, I'm saying that because now if you compare it to, think about it this way, if we put all of our energy, our service, our belief in a God that never changes, in a God that has told us that I have given you gifts to invest, it strikes me that that is a far, far lower risk. You can't see God. I understand that. Somebody walks up to you and says, I heard from God, you think he's a whack job. I get that too. I do. I live in a real world with real people. Okay? The point is, though, following that God, even with these barriers, is a heck of a lot lower risk than paying attention to something that's not going to be there tomorrow. I don't. To each his own. Okay? Let's get into some practical assessments of just unpacking. Stick to the text, I tell myself. What's the purpose of this morning's reading about loaning money is really what it's trying to show us, some basic points here, okay? This is going to, I'm taking you in the direction of what God has given us, what we should do with it. Do you see what I mean? Each of us, our gifts, our talents, our skills, our resources, okay? Not all of us are the same, duh. I mean, come on. I mean, really. George Bernard Shaw, this is a great quote that I unfortunately have put Pam through numerous times. The biggest delusion about communication is that it ever happened. 5 people in a meeting walk out with 8 different opinions about what was said. How many times? This is reality. I mean, if you ever, so we are all different, that's all I'm trying to say, at a very basic level, okay? Not everyone in God's kingdom is called to be an investor. Here I'm trying to stick to the text. Okay? In this parable, only 3 people out of this entire country did he ask to invest their money. 3 out of what, let's say there's more than 20 people. So there were 3 people. You know, this bottom shelf point, I keep trying to drone down, is that citizens of God's kingdom are responsible. I think that's another basic point. The king actually said, do something. Get off your butt, do something, execute. Okay? Mm-hmm. We're responsible, just like they are, to work towards God's goals. Okay? Now, let's take a real point here. I'm reading this and I'm thinking, yeah, it'd be great, you know, but David, the king specifically told them what to do, didn't he? The people who are going to be sitting in the pews are going to say, okay, look, it was easy. The king said invest that money. Now, if I've got gifts, the bag of gold, I don't hear anybody telling me, David, go do this, right? Now, think about this. Let's just tackle that problem. If you read through the parable, neither success or failure is safe in this parable. Success, the dudes could have lost all the money. They invested. They could have come back, the dude with 5 bags could have come back with 2. Okay? Not only lost the 5, he didn't gain anything, he lost 3. That could have happened. Definitely. Right? That's a risk. Right? The dude who buried the money, he risked taking off his master. So neither success or laziness brought you anything. Now, what's this got to do with us and our gifts and God's home? To me,